Alright, the stream should be live. Let's check it out. Yep, we are getting started. Beautiful stuff. Just getting my music set up here. Yep, we are getting started. Beautiful stuff. Alright, so for our Christmas card this year, I have decided on 5x7. It's a pretty common size, that A7 size. And as I mentioned over on the Kickstarter, the winning concept from our poll is the Clockwork Elephant, putting the topper on the tree. So I went and I got some reference. We've got this baby elephant here, and we've got our parchment that I usually use. But to get started, I need to kind of lay out where things are going to go. But to get started, I need to kind of lay out where things are going to go. All right, we've got our brush. So I do things with this blue to kind of plan out where things are going to go. This is really a holdover from working with traditional materials because the blue doesn't mean anything here and it can just get changed a lot. But when you do use traditional materials, a lot of times you'll use a non-photo blue pencil. In the early days of copying machines, there were certain values of blue that wouldn't get reproduced very easily. And so you could use these pencils to kind of lay down planning works and it wouldn't show up on your final. That's not really a thing anymore. Our scanners and copiers have all gotten sufficiently advanced that they'll pick up on a lot of those unless you adjust the settings to specifically prevent that. But it's just kind of a reference point. But it's just kind of a reference point. And I'm kind of, the proportion system isn't really satisfying me here. Baby elephants are really kind of gangly. They have very thin legs compared to their bodies. It's kind of the dog's back. They've got this more hunched back, right? And they've got very, very big heads. Like all babies, they've got very big heads. And so I'm going to actually take this reference photo that I've got and move it over here so I can look at it while I'm kind of getting things set up, right? Because they don't have these perfectly round heads. They've got over here so I can look at it while I'm kind of getting things set up, right? Because they don't have got kind of oblong heads. And their ears attach pretty high up, and then the trunk needs to go. And their ears attach pretty high up, and then the trunk needs to go. I'm going to give him the super big ears, you know, the big Dumbo ears, because it really helps reinforce that he's just a baby. So this looks very kind of loose and sloppy right now, but it helps with all the planning. Right? I like the ears being big, but even that's a little bit too much. So this looks very kind of loose and sloppy right now, but it helps with all the planning. Right? I like the ears being big, but even that's a little bit too much. And then what I'll do is turn down the opacity on this and make it a lot lighter. And then I kind of start to get more specific. And then what I'll do is turn down the opacity on this and make it a lot lighter. And then I kind of start to get more specific. Not sure I like that. That kind of makes him look like he's crying. Not sure I like that. That kind of makes him look like he's crying. We're using the African elephant here because I feel like they have a little bit more character to their faces, um, but they're both pretty much my favorite. The African elephant here because I feel like they have a little bit more character to their faces, but they're both pretty much my favorite. I'm also kind of starting to build in references for myself to where some of these clockwork elements are going to be and how they, you'll see that I'm starting to break things down, and that's kind of the whole process with this, is to see some of the anatomical shapes and use those to infer where I'm going to put some of the mechanical shapes. And then, of course, looking at things like form and function. I think we're going to use bellows for their ears here. I think that might be pretty cool. And then, of course, looking at things like form and function. I think we're going to use bellows for their ears here. I think that might be pretty cool. They don't have much in the way of necks, really. They're very short, stubby necks. So I'm not going to give him one here. I just want to create that motion a little bit. And I'm going to actually make him kind of blockier and ganglier. Create that motion a little bit. I'm going to actually make him kind of blockier and ganglier. And I like the idea of elephant clockworks being kind of heavy duty, being pretty rugged. So I'm going to try and work that in too. And I like the idea of elephant clockworks being kind of heavy duty, being pretty rugged. Where their mobility is almost an afterthought, and they've got these kind of thick armor plates that lay over each other and intersect, as opposed to some of the ones where maybe it's built to be a little bit smoother. It probably clanks, rumbles a lot. We'll make these into steam whistles or something. He could totally be crying with joy, but it might need to be oil. And I apologize if I'm not getting back to chat answers real quick. I don't have a second screen, so I can watch those real easily. But I am making an effort to check them when I can. So I think we're gonna do some like real minor space here for the rear leg to come out, and there's messing around with a strange design here on the legs because elephants can't bend more than two legs at a time. Their weight is too much. They can't gallop or canter like a lot of other animals. So if you've ever seen video of them running, you might notice that they kind of run in a strange way, and it has a lot to do with that, which is I always thought that was pretty interesting. So it's at this point that I switch to doing the final drawing, and I'm gonna pull my black up, and I'm gonna pull the graphite pencil option out. And you see this one. It's a little hard to show you. This kind of draws more like an actual pencil does. It has this texture to it, kind of makes it look like a pencil. Um, And so I like to use that for a lot of this stuff. And let's just get into it. And so I like to use that for a lot of this stuff. And let's just get into it. So as I'm moving into the trunk here, I'm thinking of like industrial hoses and stuff like that, and how they might connect to the rest of the head. And this is really the fun part, you know, once I'm not worried about anatomy and verisimilitude and long words like that, and I can work on making it look fun and interesting, and how do the mechanics work and stuff like that. I'm pretty satisfied with this so far in that it looks like a pencil drawing. Because while I work digitally very often, it's important that you get this kind of naturalistic feel. And I'm going to show you one of the, you know, kind of little witchcrafty parts of this whole thing. Is that a lot of the time I don't draw it right on the parchment. What I'll do is take this texture that I own, I'll put it here. A lot of the time I don't draw it right on the parchment. What I'll do is take this texture that I own, put it here. And through the beauty of some Photoshop filters, you can kind of make this look very old-timey, right? It doesn't really work once you've got all the planning stuff there, but this is kind of how we get to that stage. Now, obviously, if you're at the $300 level and I'm doing the hand-drawn one for you, I've got out my ink and my dip pen and the whole thing, and I'm actually doing it on the vellum. But for a lot of the stuff I do this way, that way I can fix mistakes more easily. And thanks for everybody who is tuned in right now. Let's get back to the good stuff. thanks for everybody who is tuned in right now. Let's get back to the good stuff. My rotation tool is turned off because of this display settings. So I'm not really sure how to resolve that. But we keep moving on anyway. Feel free to send me any questions. I am checking the chat filters, and I'm just going to keep going on. But we keep moving on anyway. Feel free to send me any questions. I am checking the chat filters, and I'm just going to keep going on. I gotta be honest, I'm pretty happy with this visual pun here, because if you've been following the Clockwork stuff as I've been doing it, you know I always put a model number on them, you know, treat them like schematics. But ELF here works so well because it's kind of a phonetic that's similar to elephant, but is also an elf. He's putting the thing on the Christmas tree. Maybe I'm just a nerd, but I think that's cool. It's kind of a phonetic that's similar to elephant, but is also an elf. He's putting the thing on the Christmas tree. Maybe I'm just a nerd, but I think that's cool. I gotta be honest. Drawing these curves is a real pain in the butt when I can't turn on the canvas rotation. There's something going on with my graphics card there, my setup. It's been a while since I've streamed. But I think the trunk is probably the most iconic part of the elephant, so I really want to get that done here. But I think the trunk is probably the most iconic part of the elephant, so I really want to get that done here. Alright, I think that's credible. Alright, I think that's credible. You know, and in thinking about the construction of this critter, you know, elephants, their trunks in real life are really quite amazing anatomically. They've got like 10,000 muscles in them, and they can bend them in every direction conceivable. Um, it's really impressive. It's their primary appendage for interacting with interacting with the world. But if you were designing this machine, you can't just use a hose and articulate the hose. It would fall apart. It'd be way too prone to damage. So I've kind of got this idea where there's segments of plating that would be attached to the hose, so that maybe when it's relaxed, it's completely protected, but more of the hose or the armature underneath kind of gets exposed while you're doing it. A similar idea to what I did with the giraffe way back when I did the Clockwork Giraffe, which is one of the first ones I did. Um, and as we get closer to the end here, those segments are going to get closer and closer, and I think around here they should actually start to overlap. And as we get closer to the end here, those segments are going to get closer and closer, and I think around here they should actually start to overlap. 1 second. We'll probably stop the plating there because then we're going to need something to hold the tree topper. And I think our tree topper is going to be a star. So I'm going to put the star in there. Maybe like a star gear to hold the tree topper. And I think our tree topper is going to be a star. So I'm going to put the that feels appropriate. Maybe like a star gear And you'll notice that some of these things are super sketchy and loose, kind of like this star is in parts of these segments. And then other stuff down here is pretty tight. It's pretty ready to go. And of course, we're all working at, and looking at this scale, that's really zoomed in. I agree with the comment about ELPH. I'll probably change that in the final, but it's a little bit challenging to write. I can't turn the canvas. I hadn't planned on that, though, so I like it. Let's finalize these armor plates. Put some vents here. And once those plates are finalized, I'll go back through and add the hose to everything. We'll stream until 9 p.m. tonight because I don't think anybody really wants to watch more than an hour. But I will record the rest of this and then I'll do a time lapse and put that up on YouTube as well, so you can actually see the whole thing. But I will record the rest of this and then I'll do a time lapse and put that up on YouTube as well, so you can actually see the whole thing. And of course, if you like watching people draw, if that's your thing, if that's what brought you here, I have many other videos of very similar stuff. Go back and check on Life Makes Stuff feed. You've got my Black History Month piece, which I spent probably a dozen hours on, and it's still not finished, so that means that'll get done at some point. And the Iron Fist piece and a couple of other things like that that show you more of my process and how I work with humans and stuff like that. The Iron Fist piece and a couple of other things like that show you. I'm just going to lay in the shading on some of this stuff now because it's easier than trying to remember to do it later. I'm just going to lay in the shading on some of this stuff now because it's easier. I don't have to be quite so fussy about some of the details here because it's so small. I don't have to be quite so fussy about some of the details here because it's so small. All right, that's coming along. I'm pretty happy so far. All right, that's coming along. I'm pretty happy so far. And here's the part I forgot to tell everybody about. Save early, save often. I'll just do that real quick and then get back to it. Save early, save often. Elephants kind of have these, like, there's almost a little bit of a finger on the end of their nose, so we're going to try and work that in, because I think that makes a good way to show how he's grasping this here. Perspective's maybe a little bit wonky, but I feel like description is more important than accuracy in this particular scenario. Especially since there's so many bits and parts, and we really want the event to be clear more than we want the mechanics to be clear. Alright, so I think that's pretty good. We're going to make this pretty high contrast in terms of the shading, because this is really the moment where it happens. That's the important bit. And you'll notice that there's some really strong contrasts building up in the trunk as we move closer. And it's really to help kind of draw your eye here. We've already got this nice organic curve that does a lot of the work for us. But I think that does it too. Let's pop these out a little bit more. Compared to the rest of it. Alright, so I've got about 10 minutes left, I think, and what I've got planned for tonight. So I'm going to check and see if anybody has any questions before I move on. It doesn't look like anybody. So let's head back into the face and try and punch up some of the details and shading. I'm being told there may be an echo on the stream. I'm sorry if that's the case. We'll look into how to fix that for the future. I obviously can't hear. think that the interior of his ear here is going to be this kind of telescoping tube. Kind of make some reason out of how the bellows would work. And in a sense, it kind of connects the anatomical way an elephant's ear works to the mechanical way it would have to work here. Because the reason they've got these giant ears is actually they're full of blood vessels, and that's how the elephant cools itself down. Hot blood moves from the rest of its body into the ears, and the ears are actually so close to this, they're so thin, those blood vessels are so close to the surface, they can flap their ears and cool down the blood, and then it goes back into circulation in their body. And so I like the idea. There's something poetic about the bellows opening and closing and that moving heat in and out of its body. And so I like the idea. There's something poetic about the bellows opening and closing and that moving heat in and out of its body. I kind of like these industrial textures for filling some spots. I try not to overuse them, but I think they're a nice way to fill some space and keep communicating. All right, I'm gonna start winding down here. I feel like we've got a pretty good concept of where this is headed. Let's take a look at what it might look like when it's nice and finished. All right, so that gives you an idea of the process. I kind of saw how I started with just some loose shapes and started working it into things and tightening it up, and that's kind of how I would go through the whole process. I'm still not completely sold on the mouth. I think it's important to get a sense of emotion, and I think that right now it's a little bit confused, but I'm not sure if that's the mouth or the eye. And we'll have to work from there. And there's this kind of whole process of working everything to the end, and then you come back and you have to change some things up and see how it all works holistically. But this is the process of drawing a clockwork creature. This is how we get to where we're going to have a full book of these. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments on this video or on the Kickstarter page or just about anywhere you can find me. If this is something that people seem to like, I may do this for more of the commissions as part of the project and kind of make that, we have anybody who pledges gets access to a stream of updates, and I would be totally fine with streaming a good chunk of the commission work or making it available as a time lapse as part of that feed of updates. And if you're on the shelf, now's your time to pledge. Even small amounts help us get to our goal. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and this is Mike of Mike Makes Stuff, signing off.